Welcome to the iPad Possibilities Podcast, episode number 19. Pre-announcements, possibilities, OS 4.0. A quick update before we move on to the podcast. I say that this show will be available Thursday in the regular feed. That is actually going to be untrue, as you're getting it early. You're getting it once I finish it. You're going to be getting it around 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday instead. And the reason for this, I want to give this episode to you as early as possible, so you'll have a chance to listen to it before the 4.0 event actually happens. So I'm releasing the show early for everybody. So let me hear your thoughts on the 4.0 announcement by listening to the show and then seeing what actually happens and joining us live this Thursday at 1 p.m. at the iPad Possibilities Podcast live page. For those with the application, I will also be releasing an extra episode 20, on the first use case episode. And everyone else in the regular feed, you will get that episode on Thursday. We now return to the show. Well, welcome, and this is the iPad Possibilities Podcast. I'm Tim, and I'm your host of this show, and today I'm going to share with you some thoughts regarding the new operating system coming out for the iPad and the iPhone and iPod Touch, the Apple Touch OS 4.0. And it was announced a few days ago that this Thursday that Apple will be hosting an event about their new operating system, the 4.0 release. Now, I'm recording this podcast 2 days before their announcements. I was debating between myself whether I should do a show about 4.0 before it comes out to give my thoughts on what I think might be in there. I don't have a great deal of knowledge as far as what Apple's been working on, but I'd like to share my thoughts this day with you, what I think they'll put in there, and I think it'd be great to, after they announce what 4.0 is all about, to compare what the possibilities that I thought 4.0 would bring to the reality of what they actually brought. So I'm recording this 2 days before the announcement, and this show will be released to the application people on Wednesday and Thursday morning to everybody else in the feed, so you might be able to listen to this before the announcement and then see what actually happens. And then we'll do another show with the possibilities of what 4.0 actually brings this Friday for the weekly thought, or it might be a full-length episode next week. We'll just stay tuned for that. Before we get to the main content of this show, I'd like to recognize our sponsor, On My Way. With It's On My Way, you're able to plan out your route, your trip, your errands, and quickly navigate to where you're trying to go. Say you need to go to the grocery store, get your hair cut, do all sorts of things like that. With It's On My Way on the App Store for $2.99, you can do that. So grab it today. They're a huge help to this show. They helped me getting out to Cincinnati and provided all the funds I needed to fund that trip and bring you all of that great live coverage that we did on Saturday. More of that coverage and footage is coming out each week, each day. I'm working through it as fast as I can, trying to put together shows from that. Until then, I'm putting out new shows that I'm able to edit much more quickly than I was with the live footage. So stay tuned for that. Once again, I'd like to thank It's On My Way. You can get it in the App Store today for $2.99. So now on to the main content of this show, and that is iPhone, iPad, what I'd like to call Apple Touch Operating System 4.0. What will it have? What will it contain? The first obvious one, I think it's obvious, that Apple is going to solve the question, the problem of multitasking on a mobile operating device. So what is it like to multitask on an iPad or iPhone? What will they do to solve this? Will they have application persistent mode like Evernote does, where it easily launches up the application in the previous spot with it being closed or paused, some sort of paused mode? Will they do full out multitasking where you're able to do a expose type interface to get to different applications. What will they do? I think they'll have some form of multitasking. I'm not quite sure what yet, though. Share your thoughts with me on this. What do you guys think multitasking will look like in 4.0? By the time you listen to it, we might already know. But I do think multitasking in one form or another will be on 4.0. The next thought I had was, with the iPad at 3.2, we have a kind of a clumsy way that we use iPhone apps, right? We double them up, we pixelate them, or we run them in the center of the screen. I think 4.0, what they'll do with these iPhone apps is they'll enable a dashboard type interface for iPhone apps, right? So you'll have a command to pull up the dashboard. And on that dashboard, you'll be able to load up 4 different iPhone apps at the same time, running in the 4 quadrants of the screen, as I can see very easily on my iPad that you could fit those on quite easily. It would look great. I think Apple will have some sort of dashboard interface that you're able to load that up instead of trying to do the doubling up and all this sort of un-Apple-y way to handle the iPhone apps. I think they'll give us a better solution for iPhone apps on the iPad with 4.0. The next thought I had as far as 4.0, what about more access to network devices, network storage, right? So currently the Mac can access network printers, network scanners, network hard drives, shared iTunes, screen sharing, and all of that is built right into the operating system. What if Apple with 4.0 announced with the iPad or iPhone that you're now able to print wirelessly, and you download, it has a good way of getting the drivers on there. I'm not sure how they're going to do that. That's one of the big problems, is how do you store all those drivers on a smaller device without taking up all the memory space? Now, I don't think that's a huge problem because the MacBook Air originally launched with its SSD at 64 gigabytes, and they handle that quite well. It doesn't take up a bunch of room, but it would run into problems with the 16 gigabyte models and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how Apple handles that. But I think you'll have network printers. You'll be able to connect network scanners as well. Within the Mac, you're able to access shared scanners right within Preview. I've done this. It works great. You have a scanner hooked up to your network. You're able to scan right within a different Mac and not even connected to it. It's over the network. It just senses it's there. It knows it's on the network. So I think network scanners will be there. I think you'll be able to access network hard drives, right? You'll be able to mount hard drives in some fashion. You'll be able to access network hard drives. You'll be able to, as you can in the Mac, just launch up and load up hard drives built into the operating system. I'm not sure how they'll execute that. I'm not sure how they'll do it, but I think they can and will. Another thought is shared iTunes library. Now, this is an interesting scenario because right now we're kind of in a state of uncertainty where this is going. We've heard Apple is building some sort of data center down in North Carolina, and it's not started building yet. It's at the very early stages. And I believe they'll add shared iTunes library support. So say you have a Mac or Windows PC running iTunes in the house sharing the library. Why can't your iPad access that shared library? If you look at the iPod app in the iPad, you'll see it resembles iTunes very closely. You have on one side your library with all the sources, and I could very easily see a source of iTunes shared libraries right below everything. And that would be perfect. That'd be easy to do for Apple. I believe they will do it. It would be a huge selling feature for the iPad, right? You can access your entire library on your iPad, and that would be wonderful. That would be a great experience to do that. You'd have unlimited storage capacity for music if you did that within the home, right? Because the iPad, for many people, will be a home device. It'll be the living room computer. So I believe they will enable that in some form or fashion with the iPad at least. I'm not sure about the iPhone. They may not. And another thought I had is screen sharing. Now, this is more of a stretch. They have screen sharing built into the Mac operating system. I'm wondering if they could build that into the iPad operating system, or will they? So that's another thought. It's more out there. It's more crazy of a thought. I have been testing out an application for the iPad called iTeleport, and I'll have more on that in a separate episode for you because I have found it to be incredible. An incredible application to share your screen. And I'll be talking about that more in a future episode of the iPad Possibilities podcast. Now, the fourth possibility I see with iPad OS 4.0 is that Apple will begin to allow developers to create even more powerful applications. They'll still be simple, but we'll have some more powerful applications at our disposal. What this means is applications will be able to interact between each other more easily. You'll have a larger shared file system in which you'll be able to do this. But the apps will be able to interact with each other more than they have in the past. You might have an instance where you have half and half of a screen. You have half a screen with the web browser, half a screen with a third-party app. I believe Apple will start to allow developers to interact with each other in a way they haven't done before. It'll be a way that is simple to the user, but it'll be a powerful way to do this. And the SDK will get much more advanced as far as what application developers will be able to do. We're going to begin to see some even more powerful applications. I'm not sure what they'll enable. I'm not sure what's missing from the iPad, iPhone, the Apple Touch OS from the developer standpoint, but I think they'll be adding some pretty powerful things to bring applications to even more a desktop class of device, desktop class of applications that power. We'll have that power in this mobile computing platform. And I think 4.0 will definitely bring some major advances there. Now, some redesigning, I think, is going to happen with 4.0. I believe they brought up the iPad at 3.2 to make it look exactly like a big iPod Touch or an iPhone, right? They did this so it would not startle the users, but mostly I think they did this to bring home the message of the iPad. If they put out 4.0 on the original iPad at release, the message of the iPad would not be the iPad. It would be 4.0 and the possibilities of it for the iPhone and things like that. They wanted to bring out the iPad running pretty much the same OS to bring the concentration on the iPad. So I think with 4.0, we'll see a completely redesigned home screen. It's the area where you store all your applications. It's, let's see, let me look up on my jailbroken iPhone what this is actually called, because there is a name for it, and it's actually called, you respring, the springboard is what it's called. So I believe they'll have a springboard redesign with the 4.0 operating system to make use of this space. It feels I like how it looks. My iPhone actually feels rather cramped right now rather than the iPad feeling blown up. So I think they'll have a redesign. I'm not sure how they'll do this or what it'll look like. I think we'll see a major redesign in the springboard where all the applications are stored. I'm not sure what it'll look like, but I think that will definitely be in there. As well as that, the lock screen, I believe, with 4.0 coming out, will be much more useful. Right now, you're able to access the photos and unlock the screen, and you are able to play and pause the iPod, etc. And it's very simple. There's not much that information on there. I believe they got rid of the clock app, they got rid of the weather app, they got rid of the stocks app, they got rid of all these apps on the iPad from the iPhone because they couldn't find a way to make them blown up and useful apps on the iPad. That's what they're telling us. I don't believe that's true. I actually think instead they'll bring those to the lock screen, right? So you'll Apple will create a way to display the weather, the stocks, all the information they took away from the built-in apps on the iPhone, and they'll bring those to the iPad on the lock screen. That is my thought. That's one possibility that I see with 4.0 coming out, that they kind of lied to us. I don't think it was an official statement. I don't think they did that. I forget how we heard about this, but I do believe those removed apps from the iPhone will make their way to the iPad via that lock screen. So that is what I think will happen there. I think display output will become much more powerful with 4.0. I think Apple will open that up even more, make it more powerful, where you're able to mirror the display onto another display if need be. And I think they'll open it up to developers in a much more powerful way than they have right now. So I think display output will enhance quite a bit for the next update, the big 4.0 update. Along with that, I think more Bluetooth support, more add-on support, more USB universal, through a universal USB cable support. So I think you'll be able to connect to Bluetooth printers, Bluetooth scanners, things like that. You'll be able to connect to all sorts of Bluetooth devices that are currently not supported by the Apple Touch operating system. Along with that, we'll begin to see an explosion of USB-enabled devices. That has been the one big gripe of many people, as I can't hook up anything via USB except a camera, right? So I think Apple will have this cable, and they might even use the camera connection kit, and they may enhance its features to enable more USB devices. You might be able to hook up a USB printer, a USB scanner, a USB MIDI keyboard. You may be able to hook up all these wonderful devices, all these devices that people have complained about. You might even be able to hook up a hard drive in the future. I'm not sure if this will come in 4.0, but imagine syncing, say, iTunes on the iPad. You have a hard drive that you load up via a USB cable, and you're able to sync iTunes via the iPod app. I think that could come. I'm not sure if it'll be there with 4.0, but it is a possibility in the future. I think it's not an unforeseen thing, not an impossible thing to imagine that Apple will eventually use the iPad as your own computer, replacing the desktop and trying to do that as quickly as possible. I think that is coming. I think they might do that through a standalone app. They may make the iPod app more advanced. It already looks like iTunes. Why not add the ability to sync new content to the internal hard drive through that? I think that's a huge possibility that could come in the future through a simple update to allow docked USB connections much more readily available. So that is one possibility. I think adding all those peripheral support and opening that up in a much more big way will really address a lot of the concerns a lot of the pundits have been having with the iPad. So that is one huge possibility I see in the future. Another possibility I see with 4.0 coming out is the integration between the iPad and the Mac is going to, I think, will get much more integrated. We'll begin to see the merging of the iPad and the Mac in a much bigger way. And the way I see this happening initially is with the Mac dashboard. Now, with the Mac dashboard, it's a bunch of widgets is what pops up. And I really don't use these that much. There's a bunch of widgets which look like iPhone applications, basically. And they just load up there, and they're cute looking. I don't know. They're not particularly helpful. There's some that are useful, but I think the dashboard will become much more useful with 4.0 because I believe Apple will open this up to where you can load your iPhone apps on your Mac via the dashboard, because your Mac is aware of your iTunes library. We've seen this through iPhoto and Keynote and Pages. It's got access to that media folder where it searches for your iTunes. I think the dashboard could have all of your iPhone apps down there by the plus button, and you could load those up really easily on the dashboard. It may be an instance where the developer has to okay this, that you're allowed to do this. It may have to do it that way. And I could also see iPad apps done that same way, where the dashboard, it loads it up as a larger dashboard widget, but I believe that may happen as well with the 4.0 update. The final thought I had about the possibilities of 4.0 had to do with better app management. Right now, it's very tedious to arrange and organize your applications and get everything on there. So I think with 4.0, we'll be seeing a better application management of everything overall on the iPhone and the iPad. And I think this is one huge possibility of, I guess not huge, but I think this is one thing they'll tweak. Now, I may be completely wrong with all of these guesses, all of these scenarios for iPhone, iPad, what I like to call Apple Touch operating system 4.0, but I don't think I'm too far off. I think a lot of these things will be in there. I'm going to have a lot of fun on Thursday seeing how close I was with my predictions here. I have a feeling Apple is actually going to just blow us completely away with a bunch of things no one has ever thought of, no one's ever conceived of, and the iPad will be transformed overnight to a much more powerful device, a much more useful device, and I think overnight the iPad will be transformed. So with 4.0, that is what I believe is coming. And as I said earlier, I will be covering the 4.0 event live here in Indianapolis, Indiana. I won't be out in Cupertino. I did not get an invite there, but I'll be watching the live streams, and I'll be live on Ustream through audio. I'm still waiting on a video camera, but I'll be live on Ustream, giving my thoughts as they come in. I'll be sharing what's going on at the live event in live time as it's coming in through news streams and things like that, and I'll be sharing some possibilities that come as those come out. So I'd like if you guys could join me, that'd be great. If you just go to thepossibilitiesnetwork.com, go to the live page. If you go to the live page there, you'll see my Ustream channel, and you'll be able to go in the chat room, and I see the chat room. I'll interact with you there, and I'll be live streaming from around 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time to whenever that event ends, and shortly after, whenever it feels necessary. So if you could join me, that'd be great. 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this Thursday, the morning that you most likely will receive this podcast, and it'll be great to see how close I actually was. Once again, I'd like to thank my sponsor of this show. It's on my way. You can get that today in the App Store for $2.99. And if you'd like to support this show, that's a great way to do that. Purchase that app. They are a huge support of this podcast. Some other ways to support this podcast are, first is simply to subscribe in iTunes, and that would bring up the visibility of the show in iTunes. Another way would be to leave a review in iTunes. Every review I read, I have actually learned some things from those reviews that have helped me enhance the show even more. So leave a review and let me know how I'm doing. Those also help the visibility of the show in iTunes. Let other people know what you guys think of the show. I really appreciate the reviews. Those are one of the biggest things that can really help the show. So just take 5 minutes out of your life and do that. I'd really appreciate it. If you'd like to financially support the show, you can do that in one of two ways. First off, the iPad Possibilities Podcast app is in the App Store. It's available for $2.99. And with that application, you get the shows 24 hours in advance. You get the shows Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the normal release schedule. We're going to be doing a bunch of bonus shows this week, next week, and the weeks after because of all the news coming out. I want to get as many episodes out as possible because of the wonderful world of the iPad as it is right now. And another way to support me monetarily is through just donations. If you go to the possibilitiesnetwork.com, go to the iPad page. If you scroll down, helps him buy an iPad. That'll help me to purchase applications and accessories that I can bring you more feedback as far as what the possibilities of the iPad are. So if you could donate to the show, that would be also greatly appreciated. So until next time, if you could just leave your feedback and questions and all of those things at iPadPossibilities@gmail.com and send in your voicemails at 209-542-iPad or 4723 is the iPad spelled out there numerically for you. So that's 209-542-4723. And until next time, this is Tim Chatton of the iPad Possibilities Podcast.